So now we're back with the Reconn 3 airframe. Just going to go over a few things I've done. I've used some cable ties and a little bit of gaff tape just in the centre section here to hold all the wiring down where it's got a cross, because the last thing we want is the boom rubbing on any of this stuff. So I've already checked that will actually clear it quite nicely. But you really need to make sure that you keep all your wiring clear of this centre section once that goes in. Alright, so step one, I've still got these pins sitting here, the 3 pins sitting from the Delrin block that was here, so I'm going to just pop my pivot mount in with the mounting bits at the front. Probably actually doesn't matter which way around that goes. We're not going to screw anything to the front of that, so it doesn't really matter. In fact, actually, you know, just for being different, I'm going to reverse that. See if it does make a difference. Actually, it does. No, it doesn't. I'm fooling myself. No, it doesn't. Alright, cool. Just for being different, I'm going to put the mounting pieces inward. Just to be frivolous. Alright, so now the motor, boom, the whole lot sits over the top of all that. The bearings should sit very nicely in place, preferably so they line up with the front and back edges. I know it's pretty hard to see black on black. Alright, so I'm going to grab 2 8mm M3 screws. Come on, come here. Don't you hate it when the screws run away on you? Okay, pop a bit of Loctite on one of those. Turn this whole thing over, holding the motor in place, and pop 2 screws into that back motor mount. 1, whoops, and 2. Okay, flip that back over. I'm just going to feel everything is running butter, beautifully smooth. Okay, so I can pop the other half of the mounting on top here. There's 1 pin missing. I'm going to feed that up through the bottom and grab one of my little short M2 screws and pop you into there, into this lines up with the over drilled hole on the top plate, so that basically sits in there permanently, just to hold that block. Just use 2 screwdrivers to tighten that up together. Alright, so that now gets held in place. So that's basically it. There's the gimbal in. Ta-da! Now all we need to do is slide that section onto the front, do tighten these 2 screws up, which eventually I will Loctite, but for now I'm just going to pinch them up. Pinch them in pairs, because as you tighten one, the other one will get loose. And that's it. There's the roll gimbal installed in the airframe. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just pop that back off, and to make it easier for myself, and I'm going to screw the top plate on, which you guys don't need to see. And I'm just going to put basically the Reconn back into one piece, and I'll come back and show you what I do with making it actually work. But that's basically it. It's installed. It's ready to go. Very easy install. Alright, so I'm just going to undo these 2 screws. For the sake of convenience, pop that off. And I'll be back soon. Okay, so got it all back together again. I'm going to have to do a bit more work with tidying this wiring up in here because it is possible for the odd bit of wire to start rubbing against the carbon boom. Now, you know, it's not going to be moving that much, but it's still carbon's abrasive. I don't really want it rubbing on the wires, so I'm just going to have to, before I actually fly this thing, spend a bit of time tidying the wiring up. More so than I normally do. just to make sure that there's just no possibility that anything's going to rub on that tube as it runs through. But yeah, there's plenty of room in there still anyway. Found a really good spot for the controller. Basically it'll sit very nicely between the 3 screws that hold the tail on. And if I've got this plate of the tail above the back plate, and that holds it very nicely. Once I tape that down, that's not even going to rub on the motor, but it will actually cover very beautifully the rolling part. And the other thing is it gets more weight to the back, so the controller is going to help counterweight the gimbal weight up the front. Another thing is that once I attach this up the front, I'll be able to just sort of loop the wire through a pair of these holes very nicely. There we go. So I'm just going to loop that through a pair of holes. So what I can do is I can use that to allow to regulate, if you like, a nice free loop to the camera, so that doesn't bind up anywhere. And if I continue that through, that's going to be a really nice length to plug into the controller. So with the controller sitting there, the roll motor, gold pins down, plugs into M1, should give me the correct direction. If the motor direction's wrong, all you have to do is turn that plug around, but gold connections down should be the right direction. Once I connect this up to 4S, I've got a spare connector off my battery loom here that I've added. Once I plug that into 4S, now this is set up to run on 4S with this motor. Okay, all the power settings, PIDs and everything on this controller as it ships is set to work on 4S. I know there's a few guys out there that are running a separate battery to run their gimbals, the branded gimbals. This one wants 4S. Okay, so I've got a nice little bit of wiring there. I'll be able to actually neatly tuck that out of the way with a few cable ties. So basically that's the build done. I've just got to put my controller back on and tidy some wiring up, but that's the build of the gimbal done. Okay, ready to go. So rather than bore you with me putting on a dozen cable ties, that's it. One thing you will need to do before it actually works is balance this at the front. Now it's actually, there's a lovely trick to it. You will need to put the camera in the case when you do the balancing. Alright, because the weight of the camera, of course, changes the balance. Alright, see, I've got plenty of room there on that 40mm shaft to get the camera in and out of the case. Alright, you want to check that it's balanced. Now that isn't. See, it's canting over one way. Easy way to do it, I worked out, to get the balance right, is just loosen these two off a little. And it seems counterintuitive, but you can actually just minutely alter the angle until you find the balance point for the front of the gimbal. So if I was to power that up right now, it should work. Except everything's not nailed down and everything. But there you go, that's the gimbal done. I'll just do some tidy up, do a final assembly of everything else on this, and come back and just show you it working. Okay, so it's all back in one piece. I've got all everything back together again. That's sitting up there quite nicely. It's quite secure. It's protecting the motor. Interestingly, I've got the balance pretty close, and the LiPo, that's only the 2250 LiPo, is pretty much still in the center of the airframe. In fact, I reckon by the time I put a video transmitter back here on the tail, that'll actually have to move the thing forward. Not sure where I'm going to place a FPV camera yet on this, but I'll work that one out later. Anyway, so that's it, built, done. Now, one thing I haven't done is in the two ends of this offset piece, there are grub screws to go in, and I haven't fitted them yet, but I'm just going to make sure that it all works perfectly, and once it's done, I'll actually Loctite those two grub screws in. But anyway, let's power it up. Oops, we've got a problem with one of the speedies. Alright, I'll solve that in a minute. Anyway, so there's the gimbal. It's powered up and working like a treat. I haven't had to do anything else to that. Just get it balanced. The electronics are done. So that is a completed project. Except I've got to find out why I've got a speedy not working. Alright guys, I'll catch you later.